It's time for the final word in sports all across the state. You're listening to Sports Talk with your hosts, Phil Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. You've been waiting all day, so join the show now by calling 800-956-7266.
And good evening, everybody. Welcome into Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. Friday night, this is it. Kiss the wife and kids goodbye, because you're done after the night. High school football regular season, true regular season, a couple of games starting next Thursday, but really Friday night, a week from tonight, it gets rolling. NFL preseason continuing this weekend. And, of course, the college practices continue just few weeks away from the regular season start for another season of college football. We count it all down. We stay on top of it for you here on Sports Talk. We're all back together again in our beautiful, plush, elaborate Learfield Studios, downtown Columbia, Main Street.
You in trouble or something? You kissing butt?
No. This is beautiful, elaborate, and is owned by Learfield. Everything I said was truthful. Gotcha. And we are on Main Street, and we are just down from the state capitol.
Correct.
And we do reach from the mountains to the oceans. And we are South Carolina's sports talk show of Main Street, South Carolina. Anything else I can tell you that's truthful? By the way, those of you watching on our Periscope and on our YouTube feed, Will decided to wear his clown outfit today.
It's okay. You know, the one time I can be impressed with the fact that the Jets are 0-0 in a preseason and regular season. Before
you and Kenny Hefner related in some form or fashion?
We are not. Yeah. No.
Because, I mean, he's a big Jets fan.
Pete Iacobelli of the Associated Press, also a big Jet fan. There are a lot of us here around town. Not a lot of us are very proud of it, though.
I have sympathy for you guys. I really do.
I'm a big Jets fan as soon as they land. Yeah, I'm on it.
I said this is Sports Talk on Sports Talk crime tonight between the Jets and the Falcons over here with the
Oh, that's
professor.
right. Yeah, big showdown.
I don't ever worry about the Falcons. You know why?
Why is that?
Because we never try to win a preseason game.
Yeah, remember the Browns went undefeated.
We don't try to win ever.
Browns went undefeated in the preseason last year. Just remember that.
Yes.
800-956-7266 is our phone number. If you want to join in here on this Friday night to wrap up the week and share your thoughts about anything that we have done for you so far this week, covering the Gamecocks and the Tigers and our trips around the state. We've been to South Carolina State. We've been to Benedict. We have been to Furman. Thoroughly enjoyed each of the stops. Monday night we'll be at Wofford College, mixing in with the Terriers, and the Panthers will be there working as well. Never been there. Usually our tour stop at Wofford is the last at the end of the month, but things worked out this year where we're going up earlier. It'll be the first time we've been up there while the Panthers are there, so that'll be kind of neat.
Say hi to Ron Rivera for us.
Yeah, stick our head in the window there and see how things are going in Pantherland. We have done the show before at their at the Richardson building, where the Panthers hold their quarterback meetings in the same room where Cam Newton and perhaps for a short time, Kelvin Benjamin used to sit together and talk about things instead of what we saw last night.
You know, it's weird. You know, we talked about that little scuffle yesterday before the game. More, of course, coming out afterwards, just kind of the tensions going on. And it seems like a lot of people feel that Cam kind of came out the better of it because it was Kelvin who was acting very evasive. It seemed that Cam was very, I would say, direct and wanting to at least try to talk things out like two men. But apparently Kelvin had nothing really to say to him.
All right, 800-956-7266 is our phone number. Don't forget, if you lose us over the airwaves for one reason or another, you can get us on our Periscope feed on Twitter. Our Twitter account at SportsTalkSC, our live feed on our YouTube channel as well, SportsTalkSC, and many of our radio stations, of course, streaming the show via the TuneIn app or the radio.com app, and our Columbia affiliate, the best station in Columbia, The Point Radio, streaming us live on their website, which is thepointradio.com. So coming up tonight, we'll hear more from USC and Clemson coming out of camp. Both teams practice today, USC in the morning, Clemson in the early afternoon, and both teams now setting up for scrimmages tomorrow, the first scrimmages of camp, and a little bit of news out of USC today.
You know, USC will have its scrimmage actually on Monday. They will practice Saturday and Sunday in advance of that. Clemson will have its scrimmage about noon. But the big news out at South Carolina was the emergence and at least first appearance, at least in front of us, of Josh Belk. The Gamecocks did practice yesterday, but we were not able to view any of it, so we don't know whether or not this was his first or second. But it was the first time we were at least able to see him in uniform with a helmet on. The procedure goes, as you may or may not know, 2 practices with helmets, 2 practices with shells, which is shoulder pads and helmet, and then you can put him in full pads. That's how they try and acclimate him to action there. The thing about it, again, is he came into camp at 359 pounds, incredibly weighing more than what he necessarily needed to be weighing to be able to play, at least for South Carolina this year. He was fat. I don't want to try to say that about a man.
Fat is fat. That's what you are sometimes.
When they kept talking about his...
Don't say that about a man when he can't defend himself.
I was not surprised when they kept saying, they talked about his physical. And when they said high blood pressure, I was not surprised. I really was not, because I think they were really concerned.
But he was doing some of the individual work today. He obviously can't go head to head with anybody because they're all in full pads, but he was moving on the sled. At least he had some air underneath him. The guy I saw today, Cohen, who I'm actually very impressed with, Rick Sandage. In the cock drill, he was shedding guys and throwing guys around who were first-team offensive linemen. That's a guy who, you know, between him and J.J. Edengbari, both of them are basically jockeying for the same position at backup defensive tackle. He's a guy, I think, if South Carolina needs a freshman to step up right away, that's one you want to look towards.
Lack of a better term, he's one of those rare guys who have innate strength. They may not have picked up a weight in 3 months, and then they're still throwing people around.
He's got good technique, too.
Yes.
All right, 800-956-7266. David Shelton will join us in a little bit to talk about the night of high school football jamborees around the state and the regular season coming up next week. Let's go ahead and jump to your calls. Love to hear from you tonight as we go to Daniel in Spartanburg. First up tonight here on Sports Talk. Hello, Daniel.
Hi, guys. Had a question for you, Phil. Spartanburg was unable to participate in any of the jamborees. They could do the scrimmages,
right?
That they had, but they couldn't participate in any jamborees. Now, yesterday I listened to your show, and I heard you say they had the Satoma down in the Low Country. I think it's held at the Citadel, if I'm mistaken. But the other participant in the game last year, Somerville, were they able to play in any of that Satoma yesterday?
Yeah, let me check on that, and I'll ask David Shelton when he joins us. Now, keep in mind, Sertoma has changed a lot down in the Charleston area because schools have split away from it, and counties are having their own jamborees, and not all are participating. And I'm not sure Somerville still participates in Sertoma, if not having their own county jamboree. I'll ask David when he joins us. He would know at the bottom of the hour, but you're right. One of the penalties for Spartan High coming out of that brawl last year I think it was in the playoffs.
It was early in the season. It was early in the season.
Okay, early in the season.
Yeah.
They're banned from any jamborees this year, but it does not carry over into the regular season or anything like that.
One more question. Do you know anything about Cedar Grove? I think it's the team that they'll be playing Thursday. I didn't know if you knew anything about them.
Cedar Grove out of Georgia?
Ellenwood, Georgia.
Yeah. I mean, I only know about them from a recruiting standpoint, and that is a program that traditionally picks up SEC and ACC players. I think USC has had some players from Cedar Grove, Georgia. I think Auburn's dipped into there from time to time. So I just know that they traditionally annually have some good players. I believe that is where Ellenwood, Georgia, is that Bryson Allen Williams from there? And I also think who's the former Gamecock? I could be wrong on this. Former Gamecock who plays for the Chargers, outside backer.
Melvin Ingram.
Why am I thinking Melvin Ingram?
I thought Ingram was from North Carolina.
Yeah, I think you're right, come to think of it. But I know South Carolina has gone there, and other SEC schools have gone there and gotten players. And you'll probably see some really good players on that team this year.
Plenty to get to here on the program. As you mentioned, David Shelton coming your way in about 20 minutes' time. We're going to talk to George Bryan for the PGA Championship, which currently has weather suspending it in the second round. Some low scores today. Away from Bryson Allen Williams and Coleman Hutzler from South Carolina. Also, Clemson special teams coach Danny Pearman. But next, we look ahead to Clemson's first scrimmage and what we want to see from the Tigers on Sports Talk.
Sports Talk is the sports talk show of Main Street, South Carolina. From the coast to the mountains, we cover it all.
Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. I know that this was something that Daniel in Spartanburg brought up, but you were able to do a little bit more digging on the penalties for that big fight that, again, we were recalling earlier this year, last year.
David Shelton in the Post and Courier had a preview of the jamborees down his way, and two things. First of all, as I mentioned, there are now multiple jamborees. The Sertoma has been kind of splintered throughout the counties down there. Somerville not playing in the would not be playing in the Sertoma. They would have been playing in the Dorchester Jamboree, but they too, just like Spartanburg, that team Somerville serving a suspension by the high school league for that fight in the opening game last year. So their junior varsity teams, they've got two junior varsity teams participating in the Jamboree, but not the varsity team. So they've got the similar penalty as did the Spartan High. So that answers the question about that.
Former Clemson wide receiver Deion Kane received some very tough news. He will miss his entire rookie year with a torn ACL. He injured that during last night's game against Seattle. Just adds to the list of growing players. Darius Geis, the former LSU running back, tore his ACL last night for the Redskins. A couple of other guys who've had season-ending injuries, and it's weird. We talk about this all the time, Corn, with the guys who make the leap, forego their final seasons of eligibility to get in the league. He gets an injury settlement. That's part of it. You don't want to risk that injury if that happens in your final year of collegiate eligibility.
And he had looked good in camp. He had gotten good reviews so far. It was surprising some people. They were really liking him, and that's just a tough deal.
Well, the bad thing about it is it happened on his birthday.
Oh,
yeah,
it's even worse.
And you mentioned the Panther game last night. Ray McLeod caught a touchdown pass for the Bills in that game. So
yes, he did.
That's both sides of the coin, and this is something that Carolina fans will at least be some concern about, because anytime we see one of these waivers happen with the people who are transferring, that's obviously something that people are looking at to try and at least predict how this Josh Belk's decision going to possibly come to pass. And that's Demetrius Robinson, the transfer from Cal who moved to be closer to home at UGA. He will be able to play immediately, according to the NCAA. That was something that came out right before we are on the air. This was first reported by Seth Emerson of The Athletic. So that at least is good news for Georgia, not necessarily good news for Carolina yet, because of the fact that people are still wondering how this is going to happen, but it seems like more and more of these are getting approved, Corn. The leniency could favor the Gamecocks.
Well, you think that, but then you just have to look at the situation. I don't know all the details. The Georgia transfer was coming from California.
Right.
Don't know what, preceded all of that. The South Carolina transfer here is just coming from up the road. That could work against him when they look at the convenience part of it and the fact that maybe they don't see the hardship there that maybe some others had, and that helped them get their waiver through. It might not help him in this particular case. But we should find out more from Muschamp tomorrow, because he can now talk about him. Since he obviously has been cleared to practice, he is going to be in school. He's now property of the Gamecocks, so he can be discussed.
I'm wondering, and my questions of that would be, what is that process like? What do the Gamecocks have to prove? Do they have to prove hardship? Do they have to prove that he was someone of good standing at Clemson? Would Clemson try to block him being able to play? For all intents and purposes, it did seem like Clemson did all the right things on the way out, granted him his full release. Dabo Swinney and the folks there had nothing but nice things to say about him. From what we understand, his academics were in order. So the only thing that, again, it comes down to is the fact that he just didn't want to be there for whatever reason you want to give. And I know that we went through a long rigmarole about why he wanted to leave, or whether or not it was something to do with family or interaction with teammates, stuff in that realm. None of necessarily our business, but at least from the standpoint of what it means for the Gamecocks on the field, it just doesn't seem right if he's not allowed to play with all these other decisions coming down.
But all that being said, even if he got a waiver, he looks to be a long way away from being ready to play this year.
But it's a position of need, and you could get him on the field middle of the season, and possibly even, even if it's a situation where you get him in for the last 4 games and have him use that redshirt rule.
Absolutely.
That's something that's big.
Well, if he made a copy of it, just Kinlaw his plan of how he took the weight off
as
quickly as he did. Maybe that'll work.
All right, let me update a couple of things. Denny Hamlin has won the pole at Michigan at 2:02.794. Kyle Busch second fastest at 2:02.731. More on that coming up when we have the full Monty on NASCAR. PGA Championship suspended because of weather, storms in St. Louis. It's been incredibly hot there. Gary Woodland in with a 66, puts him at 10 under par. Aikens, Kevin Kisner, man, is he having a year. 64 today. He's in at 9 under par. Brooks Koepka, a 63. They're really going low. If you watch it, man, the greens are holding incredibly well.
Darts. Yeah. Like throwing darts.
Koepka, 8 under par after a 63. Dustin Johnson's in at 66. He's at 7 under. Charles Schwartzel, a 63, 7 under. Thomas Peters at 7 under after a 66. Ricky Fowler through 10 holes is at 7 under. You go back to Kisner, he made the turn at 29. They were talking about him threatening the majors record of 62, but he couldn't hold it together. 64, that's nothing to sneeze. I say hold it together. He shot 64.
Yeah.
He just didn't hold it together quite as well as he did on the front side.
Think about Kisner, man. Like I said, he always kind of seems to be around there, but he hasn't necessarily gotten, the full 4 rounds together. He was doing well at the Heritage earlier this year, obviously, and that was something that could have been a very nice feel-good story for somebody inside the state. But, you wonder whether or not he can actually, maybe put 4 rounds together. That's the biggest challenge when it comes to these tournaments.
Let me give you a few more scores of notes. Jordan Spieth, 66, 3 under. Tiger got 7 holes in before the suspension, and he was playing well. He's 3 under on the day, 3 under for the tournament. Russell Henley is 65. He's at 1 under. Rory McIlroy's on the course. He's even on the day, even on the tournament. Kyle Stanley is 73, leaves him at +1. Sergio Garcia, +1. Matt Kuchar, +1. Those two are in. Bill Haas had a 70. He's +2. Scott Brown is on the course, 2 over for the tournament, even on the round. Phil Mickelson is on the course, even for the day, +3 for the tournament. He's through 8 holes.
He's looked like he's struggling, man.
Davis Love the third is +5, even today, +5 for the tournament. And Bubba, he skied to a 78 today, leaving him at +8.
His majors lately have been some god awful. I mean, I don't want to speak for my golf game, but he's a professional. He's not doing well.
Projected cut right now is even, but that could move, of course, because so many golfers are still on the course. We'll get more from George Bryan III on golf, birdies and bogeys around the state, and also keeping an eye on the last of the majors for this season.
I know we won't see anything tomorrow from Clemson with their scrimmage, but I think I'm wondering, because of the fact that so much of what Kelly Bryant has done in front of people hasn't been good. I'm very curious to see just how the message is portrayed by Dabo about how things go tomorrow. Do you want someone to start to emerge, or do you want this competition to still be a heated one?
I think he won't tell you. I don't think he's going to come out and say tomorrow after the first scrimmage, well, it's Kelly Bryant who's separated, or it's Trevor Lawrence who's separated. I think he still wants to keep that under wraps, keep the competition going through at least the second scrimmage. And then after that, we'll be starting to turn the corner towards game preparation. And then I think you've got to have a number 1 by then. And I would imagine they will announce it at some point in time. But I wouldn't think tomorrow they're going to let anything out about who might be the number 1 guy at this point.
No. Plus, I think it's almost a twofold evaluation in that there's no way in the world you could say, and they'll tell you differently, that the series of plays they run for one quarterback will work for the other quarterback. It almost seems like their games are diametrically opposed to each other.
Real quick before the break, want to send out our thoughts and condolences to the family of our good friend and contributor David Hood.
Yes.
His mom passed away, so we certainly are thinking about him, and also want to pass out condolences to a good friend of Sports Talk, good friend of ours, whose father passed away, Arch Fowler, A.L. Fowler Jr., at the age of 98. A Wofford man passed away, but what a tremendous man and family that he had in Bennettsville. So we're thinking about those two families tonight here on Sports Talk.
High school football chatter next. David Shelton as we get closer and closer to the season beginning. Oh, my. I'm glad we don't turn the mics on when we're in break.
Well, we should.
Why not?
We might threaten our FCC license.
That's behind our paywall. We should let people know what's going on behind our paywall.
That'd be a great way to get revenue for the folks at Learfield. We could build a paywall where you could listen to what we talk about on the air.
I think people who are watching us are reading our lips. I think there's some lip readers out there.
I'll tell you what,
follow along.
You wouldn't have wanted to read the lips of the last break, boy.
That was good stuff.
Not good.
Dynamic stuff. Let's head down to Charleston. It's high school football time. Jamborees last night, tonight. I guess some tomorrow, but we get down to real business on Thursday and Friday of next week with the regular season games. David Shelton of the High School Sports Report and the Charleston Post and Courier, the best in the business, knows all, tells all about high school football. David, how are you?
Hey, I'm good. Eating popcorn in the press box.
Can't beat that. Bet you didn't pay for it.
Nope.
Not surprised.
I had to pay $5 for the popcorn, so they better be paying me.
So you were where?
I'm at the Citadel at the Sertoma Classic.
Gotcha. Which is not what it used to be, right? Not as many teams. Other counties are having their own jamborees down there.
Yeah, it's definitely changed a little bit. There's a lot of reasons why, but there are a couple of good matchups tonight. Wando and Timberland, Bishop England and Porter-Gaud. The kind of revival of the Holy War that went on for years, and then they quit playing. So. There's some decent football, and then over in Dorchester County, Ashley Ridge, Woodland, and Fort Dorchester are doing their thing over there. So Somerville sitting out, of course, because of their fight last year with Spartanburg. So, which is a whole nother question why they sit teams out of jamborees a year later when they've already punished the players that were involved in the fight a year ago. So, yeah,
excellent.
Another one of those high school league rules. You don't figure out.
Excellent point. I saw where Dillon won its, scrimmage last night against a team from across the border in North Carolina. Must have looked impressive.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of good things about Dillon in the preseason. They beat Hartsville like a drum. Somebody told me it was 10 touchdowns to 1, but you never know. But and then Scotland County, who they beat last night, and that's predominantly a very good team in North Carolina, to beat them 20-7, but all reports are that Jackie Hayes has got another juggernaut defense, very good along the front seven. Of course, they have the Wake Forest commitment, Shamar McCollum, but it's going to be a tough road for somebody to beat Dillon again this year.
Were you surprised that McCollum went ahead and committed so early out of state when maybe if he had held off, and of course it's not over until the signing day, but maybe Clemson or South Carolina might have moved in more strongly with him?
Yeah, I was a little surprised that he did it so early. Not necessarily that he went out of state, but that he did it so early. I got a feeling Wake Forest would have waited as long as they needed to wait. It's not like they cut people off their list that they really want. But I never got the feeling during recruiting, and I don't follow it like you do, but I never got the impression that South Carolina and Clemson were really strong on him. They maybe they liked him, but weren't just crazy about him. And maybe he just felt the love. I heard Wake Forest did a great job recruiting him. So, if you feel loved, and that's all it is about these kids these days, when you see their commitments, I just felt loved. They treat me like family, and, hey, go for it. If you know where you want to go for it.
Yeah. He needs to put on some weight, doesn't he?
Yeah. He's a little on the thin side, but I'm telling you, he can run and he can hit. He's got all the physical tools. He's probably going to be a guy that puts on 15, 20 pounds, maybe 25 pounds over the course of 4 years. So he'll get big enough. But, man, I tell you, he can sure run people down. He is quick.
Who is, you think, David, the biggest of the in-state targets, whether it's a guy like Pickens or somebody else of in-state persuasion, somebody who Clemson and Carolina are targeting? Who's the guy you think you're looking at least most towards this year?
You mean that's uncommitted?
Either uncommitted or already committed, either way.
Yeah, well, I think Zach Pickens is certainly I would say he's the number one prospect. But, after number one, it is really, it just depends on who you ask. Some like Jamario Holly, some like Michael Dukes, the running back at First Baptist. There's not really what I would call a clear-cut number two guy. There's a guy over at, I think, was it Williston or somewhere over there that committed to South Carolina, a big lineman or linebacker?
Yeah.
The name escapes me, but from everything I've read and been hearing over the summer, I think Zach Pickens was kind of the clear-cut number one guy.
Yeah. Guy you're talking about who committed to South Carolina would be Keyshawn Toney out of Williston, Elko.
That's it.
Tight end.
There's actually there's a good lineman here playing here for Garrett Tech, Dalmont Gordine.
Yeah.
He's gotten some Division I offers, and just looking at him from up here at the press box, he's an impressive looking kid. Looks like a Division I player.
In your conversations with some of the coaches, is there any particular rule change this year that they think is going to affect how they coach or could have effect on ball games this year?
You know, I don't think there's one that will affect how they coach, but I've already seen it called in scrimmages and in jamborees where players have been removed from the field because the new rule about the knee pad, you know, the knee cap has to be covered.
Mm-hmm.
And it used to be, you know, these kids play with the knee thing way up on above their knee. But now you have to have the knee covered. And I saw it last night in Berkeley before they made a snap. Officials blew the whistle and just made two guys leave the field for one play until almost like when the helmet comes off kind of thing. So I don't know that I don't know if it's a penalty. They didn't throw a flag, but they did make the players leave the field. So that's going to be something because, you know, knees haven't been covered in football since, like, you know, when Phil played. So
I wore knee pads. I needed every pad.
You know, it's funny you bring this up because I was at Furman last night, and the two kids we had in with us on our interviews, well, they were in their full pads because they were going directly to practice, and in their practice, they don't call them pants anymore; they're shorts, and their knees are totally uncovered. And I said, guys, how do you guys play with nothing on your knees like that? And both of them said, we're quicker, we're faster, we move much better this way without them. So,
there's no question. It is definitely a different feel for an athlete, for a football player to have them down that low. And I'm looking down on the field right now and I'm seeing, you know, all the they all look covered from where I can tell. But I just noticed in the scrimmage that I went to that the official called it and brought the guy off the field, and in the jamboree last night I saw it. So, you know, like I said, I don't think it's going to affect the game, you know, unless your star quarterback is taken off the field on 4th and goal at the 1.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, other than that, I don't think it'll change the way a game is called.
Have you
per se?
Have you heard anything around the state in practices related to the new rule regarding heat, humidity coming off the field when it reaches a certain point with the new equipment now that you must have on the field to determine what level of humidity is out there, which can affect the health of the kids?
Yeah, it's happened a little bit down here. You know, we've had so much rain here in Charleston. The temperatures haven't really gotten out of control. But earlier this week, I know Bishop England and Ashley Ridge started a scrimmage at 9 o'clock in the morning, and by 10 o'clock, the bulb thermometer had already reached 91. Which when 91 hits, you got to come off the field, take all the pads off, you're done. So they scrimmaged for an hour, and by 10 a.m. it was already over, and they yanked them off the field. And so I'm sure there's been some practices that have been, had to start a little later or get done a little sooner because there's no question when it gets a certain temperature. And it factors in wind, too. And I guess at Bishop England over there on Daniel Island, there was no wind that day. So it was pretty hot and very humid. It was after a night that it had rained. So you know how it is when next morning the sun comes out, it just gets blistering. And so it has affected some. I haven't heard that it's affected any jamborees, although I did see a tweet earlier where up in Myrtle Beach, I think it was 89. So at that point, you can't even put pads on and practice. I mean, go through warm up. So the first month of the season, you're going to see some Friday night games not start till 8 o'clock.
You know, they'd make them tougher there on Daniel Island with my Bishops now.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. Well, they lost 28-0 in 1 hour.
All right,
go Whitmire. Go Whitmire. Here we go.
We thank you, my friend. Stay cool, eat your popcorn, and we'll catch you next week when it all starts for real.
Okay, man. Y'all take care.
It's like I have 2 NFL teams. I'll have 2 high school South Carolina teams.
And neither one of them wants you to be a supporter. That's the interesting thing.
Pretty bad.
They both reject you.
Recruiting.
Be right back.
Next.
These guys, they never sleep. Check them out on the web at SportsTalkSC.com. Now, more of Sports Talk on the South Carolina Radio Network.
Top of our next hour on Sports Talk, we're going to talk about the PGA Championship, with which the second round of it has been suspended for the day. They're going to resume that coming up at 8 o'clock Eastern Time, 7 o'clock Central on Saturday morning. And then the third round is going to be played from groups of 3 on double tees, beginning about 30 minutes after the conclusion of round 2. They're looking at possibly finishing around 12:15 to 2:15 Eastern Time. They basically had to evacuate everybody from the facility there because of the torrential rain and thunderstorms, as it is wont to do in the Midwest.
All right, 800-956-7266. We're going to hear from the Gamecocks' Coleman Hutzler coming up in just a couple of moments. Let's go to James in Sumter. Next with us here on Sports Talk. Hello, James.
Hey, guys. Thanks for taking my call. I called in, and I heard you guys. I caught, like, the middle of the conversation about the quarterback situation up at Clemson. And just you guys' opinion. Now, listen, I know Clemson is loaded on defense, and national championships are very, very, very hard to win. I know Alabama makes it look easy, but they really pour a lot of money into that program. They almost treat it like a professional program. My question is, okay, Kelly Bryant and Trevor Lawrence. And I know Trevor Lawrence, he's going to probably turn out to be a really, really good quarterback. I don't know Deshaun Watson, because those guys only come once every 25 years or so. But what I'm saying is this a good thing or a bad thing that this senior can't separate himself from a freshman? And I'll just kind of hang up and listen to what you guys think.
Is it a good thing or a bad thing? You know, I think we have to eliminate the identification by class. You know, the fact that you're a senior, leadership-wise and all of that is fine. But when it comes to ability and giving a team a better chance to win, if the freshman is that guy, you don't worry about class. So I just think you look at 2 players in particular here who are competing. One will eventually emerge. I can't see them doing a 2-quarterback thing. That's just not Clemson's style with this offense. I don't see them splitting it up. I think they're going to settle on one. You know, one of the things that's been pointed out is their down the field passing game last year lacked compared to those better teams nationally. And the feeling is that Trevor Lawrence is the guy that can certainly give them the much better down the field passing game compared to Kelly Bryant. So I don't think it's going to matter one iota to the coaching staff, whether it's senior, freshman, or sophomore. It's the guy that's going to give them the more dangerous offense.
And that's and it also depends on what the coach wants. And I think, Phil, what you're leaning toward is the fact that with Deshaun Watson, you always had the threat of the big strike, the quick strike. And that's what was lacking last year. They couldn't strike quickly. And let's face it, one of the effective means of Clemson's defense is not only talent, but they always played from in front. You know, they rarely fell behind in a game where they had to really dissect the other team's offense, and the offense had their full playbook. Usually you had to throw against Clemson because you were about 2 touchdowns behind. So I think they want the quick strike, and that's what the freshman gives them.
One thing you always hear these coaches say is you want to get the best 11 players on the field at any given time. And I think that, you know, at any given time, Kelly Bryant could be one of the best 11 on the football field. But if Trevor Lawrence brings them more diversified looks as far as being able to throw the football, I don't know how you can keep him on the sideline.
You're going to hear from Coleman Hutzler in just a moment. He's on the defensive side, and this reminds me, I was talking to a football coach this afternoon about South Carolina and the Gamecocks' desire to go fast, and the comment yesterday about getting a snap off every 7 seconds. That's all well and good if you're getting first downs, but imagine you're the Gamecock defensive staff. Your offense is out there trying to go lickety-split.
Oh, yeah.
And they go 3 and out, using up about, let's just give them the benefit of the doubt, about 40 seconds of clock.
Yeah.
And then you're all of a sudden sending your defense back out
You
there.
You see it all the time with Missouri. I mean, it's
is South Carolina going to be married to that philosophy, knowing it's going to put its defense at peril?
It depends, because Georgia did it a lot last year, but guess what? Georgia would go quickly throw, and then pop 2 quick draw plays and really break the game open with the run.
Yeah.
Playing fast.
More about controlling the tempo, not necessarily just going fast.
No doubt. No doubt. And I'm wondering how Coleman Hutzler, linebackers coach, part of that defensive staff, and the special teams coach, feels about, one of the things that was a problem at Clemson when Kevin Steele was a defensive coordinator was Steele believed that the Clemson offense was going too fast and needed to kind of slow down to help out the defense. Dabo was having none of that, and that's one of the reasons that those two didn't get along. Now, Muschamp is really the guy that runs the South Carolina defense. How's he going to feel about putting that unit back on the field every 40 seconds to 60 seconds if the offense isn't making first down?
Yeah, one of the things, the metrics behind Muschamp is that he is usually one of the slowest paced offenses because he wants to win with his defense. As you mentioned, we spoke with South Carolina special teams coach and linebackers coach Coleman Hutzler. We spent more time, though, on the special teams and started by asking him about the competition at punt return, which is very crowded.
We've had an open competition, and it's been awesome, actually. I think, this is really third year in the program, having some more bodies that can go back there and compete and having the athletes to go do it. So it's been a great competition. Guys like Brian Edwards and Shy Smith and even young guys like Josh Vann going back there. Nick Harvey, grad transfer. So we got a lot of names in the hat right now, and obviously come September 1, we got to pick one out. But they've been competing.
Right now, Hutz, is it just more important about catching the ball, considering some of the adventures of the past?
Right, primary, objective number one, is obviously catching and communicating. Being able to communicate, traffic control, we call it, right? I mean, you gotta know when to make those poison calls, when to get everybody away, and you can't, allow turnovers. We had 2 turnovers last year, which are unfortunate. We forced 4 as a punt team, and it really helped us, field position wise. So, we got to communicate, but obviously ball security and ball possession is number one.
Bill said semi-seriously that you aren't going to utilize the new fair catch rule on kickoffs. Is that something that you guys are lockstep in?
Do you want Debo to fair catch the ball? Me either. Okay? Every chance Debo Jamo can have a ball in his hands and can make a play for us, we're going to give him that opportunity. Obviously, we got to be smart, and we know teams are going to potentially keep away from him a little bit, but we understand the rule. We know the rule. We'll use it, when we need it. But if we can get the ball in his hands, our guys, bust their butts for him, and we know we can make big plays.
How do you combat that game?
Yeah, I mean,
are there ways you can make sure he gets the ball?
Yeah, I mean, there's some schematic things and things we can do to help with that. And that's how we that's how we work starting in fall camp. And so, we're going to try and put him in the best position to get him the ball.
How excited are you to have him available again to return?
I'm very excited. Yeah, I'm very excited. It's great to have him back, and it provides energy and some juice to the guys in front of him. And he knows, and he's, a very unselfish guy, and talks about, the importance of those guys, those 10 guys blocking for him. So, it's a great thing. It's not a one-man unit. It's not a one-man team by any means, but obviously he provides a big play opportunity for us.
How's the kicking competition going?
It's going great. It's amazing what a little competition does. Parker White had a great summer. Really had a good spring, had a great summer, and has stepped up his game. And Shane's come in here and is competing, and so is Wozniak. We got 3 guys who have really made strides and made big improvements, and they're competing at a high level.
The numbers with Shane weren't exactly the – and I was, again, talking a little bit more about Shane Hines. He basically said, even though the numbers weren't the best, he did make some clutch kicks when he was at Kent State, so that's at least a good thing for South Carolina to bring in, because that was something that they were lacking at going into last year.
Yes, I mean, the kicking last year was kind of a hold-your-breath thing for South Carolina, and they're hoping that the transfer maybe is going to be the answer, but the other 2 guys have experience under pressure, and Parker eventually Parker White, right? White eventually, I don't call people by their first names, White eventually took the job and did okay. His doesn't have the strongest leg in the world, but he's
got a strong leg. It's just not accurate.
Yeah. Inside the 35, he was great.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
But so would they toy with the idea of having a long distance kicker and Parker White?
You'd like to have one guy to handle both of them if you could find that guy.
That's the biggest thing. Continue with sports talk and looking at the PGA Championship to start our next hour. George Bryan III joins us next.
Hum told me.
Round 2 of Sports Talk up next with your hosts Phil Kornblut, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. Don't leave us hanging. Join the show, 800-956-7266.
Second hour of the day, final hour of the week of Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network, along with Phil Kornblut, Professor Tom Hayes. I'm Will Pelagic. Hope you're enjoying yourself as you get ready for the weekend. It's a final weekend with really without any football of substance. Of course, week 0 of high school football next Friday, and of course, a couple of weeks away from college football starting in the state and across the country. NFL football with preseason going on, and of course, we're about a month away from the start of that regular season and the season's final major. As they say, Glory's last shot, Corn, suspended by rain today.
And it won't be Glory's last shot anymore. After Sunday, as they move it,
it's a real last shot
into the month of May. We welcome in our good buddy George Bryan III, birdies and bogeys around the state of South Carolina, as well as nationally with the PGA Championship, the last major being delayed right now. But George, we got to give a shout out to the 2 South Carolina guys way up on the leaderboard. Here is Kevin Kisner once again, and here is Dustin Johnson. Once again, either one of those guys could win this thing.
Absolutely, and there's a saying in the sports world, especially in the fitness world, it's called time under tension. And these South Carolina boys are getting plenty of time under tension. There's no greater tension than in the major championships, the professional majors. And what happens when your body's under that kind of tension, it transforms into something you're not familiar with. Hey, I'm going to leverage again this time. I'm going to go all out with Kisner.
Yeah,
he is. He hits his ball really good. He doesn't give up. Now I got to tell you, if it gets down to if both players are hitting on all cylinders, either one can win. DJ obviously would get the slight nod because of his physical capacity there, but my bet's on Kisner.
29 on the front today for him. He slumped to a 35 on the back, so a 64. That's not bad. But, I know you were very upset with the USGA and the way they set things up for the Open. Now here, you've got a course that's pretty much giving it up to the players. Their shots are holding. Everything seems to be set up for great scoring. So for a major, do you like this? Do you like the more friendly setup compared to what you saw in the Open?
Well, I just like golf. And when you can play GOLF, that's just what all these players train and they practice for. Hey, we can take technology and take it anywhere we want to do it. I mean, it's so easy. Using equipment, the machinery, with the latest and greatest, we alter the game to the extent that it's just not golf. So I think that it appears that the PGA has done a great job in the setup. And, hey, these are the greatest players in the world. And why shouldn't they play great? What happens if we get in the NBA and we go, we're going to take that goal to 15 feet and we're going to make the ball just a little bigger? I mean, who's going to come watch that?
I kind of wish they'd do that. It's a good idea.
There is some there is some length, George. A couple of the longer par 4s play as par 5s for the members. I would call it crafty length, almost kind of in a way like the Heritage is set up. How would you characterize at least the setup of this course?
Well, I'm not there, and TV, and I don't know. I'll have to admit that the commentators, they do an okay job, but it's really difficult if I'm not there. It sounds, based on what I can tell, it's a good solid setup. And it's hard now. The players are so quiet; they don't want comments to hurt their marketability and all that crap. So they're not gonna speak up too much if it's not set up. But based on what little I can tell, it's pretty solid setup. Hey, I'll tell you what. Next week I'll know. I'm going to. We got the PGA Tour coming through the Carolinas.
Yep. Back to Greensboro, right?
Absolutely. And one of the things that we turn on to watch, we want to see players play great, and it appears that they're doing just that. That's what the greatest players in the game are supposed to do: shoot good.
Well,
it's simple to me, man.
Yeah. You look at a guy like Kisner, though, and you're on the course, George, and you are in the zone. and suddenly everybody says, get off the course. What can you maintain being in the zone, or what kind of tricks of the trade can you do to make sure that when he comes out there tomorrow, he's in the same zone he's been in so far?
Oh, that's a crafty question, and I don't have any absolute answers for that. You knew the answer to that question before you asked it. That's why I love you, Pro. And hey, that's the trick too. Is momentum's hard to maintain in golf. It's a fairly slow game to start with. So for a veteran like Kisner, that's what I go back to time under tension. He's got a great chance. These guys know what to do. It's like a timeout in football down in 2 minutes. It's what the field goal, what the opposing coach will do to a field goal kicker to ice him down. But these guys are trained, and girls, and speaking of girls, we got to talk about Lauren Stevenson. She's in the semifinals of the U.S. Amateur at the Golf Club of Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
But back to your question, Pro, the best in the world, they stay warm, loose, and it's a mindset. So I'd say if they don't have experience and in that position, not a lot of time under tension, and it's current tension that Kisner and DJ have. DJ just 1 week before last. They're the best at it. They won't have that big of a problem, but it could be an issue. Depends on the weather conditions and what they're faced with when they come back.
Hey, George, real quick, the South Carolina Amateur 87th edition, William Harwood of Columbia. What a scorecard for him over 4 rounds, all sixes until he got to round 4, and he finished with a 70. 16 under par, winning by a shot over Sawyer Mills.
Hey, and that's great to see. And these two players, just like we're talking about Kisner and DJ in contention, we were talking about these guys back 15, the same guys leading the PGA. We were talking junior and amateur golf about them. And these are 10 years from now, if not sooner, these are the same players we'll be talking about then. They are really, really good. 16 under par at the golf course is spectacular.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand he had to make a 4-footer on the last hole to beat the young Mills from Seneca, I guess, is where
easily.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what a great event! What great players we have in this area, and we gotta talk about women's golf and the U.S. Amateur. We've got a player from right here in the middle, Lauren Stevenson, in the U.S. Amateur semifinals. That means the final 4. So tomorrow she will be playing for a chance at the national championship. That's pretty special right here in South Carolina.
Mm-hmm. And isn't it next summer that we've got down in Charleston the U.S. Women's Open?
Yes.
Oh, and that's so exciting. I can tell you that's one of the best venues, and Country Club of Charleston is just spectacular, and I can't wait to see how they set that up. And the USGA, here we go. I think they've got a great opportunity, and looking forward to that. Really am.
You're favoring Country Club of Charleston over Kiowa now? Come on.
Well, I'll tell you what. Country Club of Charleston, that's something special. Absolutely. It's extremely special. Old school architecture, and it's that when they had do it by hand, horse and buggies and mules, man, it's simple, but it's also just a great test of golf, and can't wait.
Hey, George, we thank you, my friend. You have yourself a bunch of birdies this weekend, and we'll catch you next week.
See them high, but shoot them low, man.
You leave the bogeys to us, and you take care of the birdies.
Mm.
And I was just thinking.
Yes.
In my lousy golf career, spanning 5 decades.
I love how your career fluctuates.
I was just thinking. I don't think I've had 20 birdies total in my life.
Yeah.
Think about that. These guys go out, shoot 64. They put together 15, 20 birdies in a weekend.
I think I've had maybe 2.
Never had a hole in one.
I remember both of them.
Have you ever had a hole in one?
I've not.
I've never had a hole in one.
That I thought was a hole in one.
Yeah. Then you found in a ditch?
No,
it was about 10 yards past.
I hit the stick one time, and that's about as close as I've come.
I've skipped one across the pond and put it on the green.
We've all done that.
My dad said, "Beat my son Jesus."
Oh no!
Okay,
because I could walk on water.
There you go.
This is the place to talk Tigers, Gamecocks, and more. Sports talk across the state on the South Carolina Radio Network.
Let's talk South Carolina Radio Network. You know, Corn, I saw this come across. Florida State has signed a multi-year agreement with IMG Academy to hold some of its preseason practices there. Does that not seem like an unfair advantage to you?
Yeah. But, I mean, the NCAA has allowed schools to move their practices around the country, to have these camps around the country. I mean, they basically have,
like, right before the season,
given them the go-ahead. I mean, there's no rule against it. You can't stop people from being creative. But in the recruiting world, I keep saying you got to do something to curb recruiting, and they do nothing, and it's going to continue to grow and spin out of control.
Why do I feel that this is a shot across the bow by a new coaching staff saying, Clemson, we know you're in here. This is what we're going to do against you. It almost smells like it.
Well, I mean,
Jimbo
Clemson went down to,
he thought of it.
Clemson went down to IMG last year and got a couple of players, Xavier Thomas and Mike Jones Jr.
Who?
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
And now Georgia has got the defensive end down there committed that Clemson has tried to pull away, but I think he's still firm there. There's a running back there that Clemson has been dilly-dallying with, but I'm not sure they're going to get him. But, yeah, if you're a coaching staff and this is legal and your school's willing to pony up, it's going to give you some kind of a recruiting edge, you're going to do it. Other coaches probably wish they had thought of it ahead of time. All right, 800-956-7266, recruiting coming up. And we're also going to hear from the Gamecocks, Bryson Allen Williams, previewing their scrimmage tomorrow. Tippy in Edgefield, good to have you with us tonight on Sports Talk.
Hey, guys, real quick, I missed out on the golf segment. Have you heard about the Augusta National, what they're doing for the women's golf before the Masters?
No, what are they doing?
They will have a 3-day tournament at a golf course in Augusta, and the top 72 women amateurs from there will be able to play on Saturday at the Augusta National for the women's, I think they're calling it the Augusta National Women's Amateur Invitational.
Yeah, they came out with that right before the Masters this year. Remember that?
Yeah, I thought you were giving us something new that they have been developing. Yeah, they announced that the week of the Masters that they were
very nice
starting up this women's event.
Well needed, and better late than never.
Are you excited about it down there?
Oh, definitely. I don't know about the rest of them, but we've had the LPGA here a couple times, a little bit recently and a little bit long time ago, but now this is going to help a lot. And the only question I have is they're playing on one course for 3 days, and then the top 72 gets to play the Augusta National, and it's set up for the Masters because they're playing the Saturday before the drive, chip, and putt.
Yeah.
So is that cruel or not? Did they get a practice round or what? Because, I mean, to step on the Augusta National compared to another golf course, that's putting down the front windshield of a Volkswagen and making the ball stop.
Good point. I don't know what their plans are for letting them on because, they don't allow a lot of play in the weeks leading up to the Masters, and I can't imagine that they want to have 72 golfers, going all around that course and digging it up before you get to the Masters. So I don't know what their plans are about that. Maybe well in advance they're going to let the ladies get out there and get some rounds in, so at least they have a feel for it when their time comes.
Sure.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate that. And let's go to Mike and Dylan for our next phone call here on Sports Talk. Hey, Mike. Hey, Mike.
Oh, Mike sounds a heck of a lot like a dial tone.
He does indeed. All right, let's Mike's there. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah.
Hey, I just missed David Shelton a while ago. I missed I want to know, can you tell me something about the 3 county teams over in Dillon and how they're going to fare out this year?
Well, we talked about Dillon and how well they played last night against Scotland County in their jamboree. Apparently, they look very, very good. I tell you.
I missed that. I'm not at home at all. So they played Scotland last night?
Played Scotland County and apparently did well. Looked good.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah. And then the other 2 schools in Dillon County, Latta has got a very good quarterback in Gunnar Brewer, who's been given a walk-on opportunity at, I think it was Clemson, gave him a walk-on opportunity. I think he's got an offer from Coastal Carolina. So they've got a good quarterback. They've got the Stanley kid Deontay Stanley at wide receiver. So Atlanta's got a pretty good little punch there. And, of course, Lakeview's Lakeview. They're going to be Lakeview, which means they'll be in the playoffs and they'll be probably at least semifinals, if not state finals once again.
Of course, we had a chance earlier today to speak with South Carolina's Bryson Allen Williams about his comeback coming into the 5th year of his Gamecock career. Talked very, very candidly about his return from a shoulder injury last year against Kentucky, and also about the team speed that he believes this defense can possibly compose.
Yeah, we got a lot of guys that can run. I know that's the biggest thing that we emphasize this offseason is, being able to run. While still, making sure we put it in the weight room. And I feel like Coach Dillman and his staff did a great job in, developing us, and we look like a different team when you see us on the field. So just, continue, like I said, continuing to grow, continue to get faster, bringing some of the younger guys up with us and continuing to, have that depth because it's important. Like I said, I went down and no one thought I was going to go down. It was my last year, and a lot of young guys had to step up and play. So there's no telling, what might happen. Lord forbid any big injuries happen to anybody, but, that depth, you need those young guys up, ready to play. So
do you use that as an example?
Oh yeah, definitely. I make sure I tell everybody, like, a lot of the young guys that are on the field, I'm with the D-line most of the time. So, a lot of those guys that, the young guys, I tell them, it's one play away. Anybody can go down at any time. So you got to be prepared to play. And every time you take a practice rep, you got to make sure that you understand that you could be the one that's starting week 5, week 6, week 7.
When last year humble you?
It humbled me a lot. I was ready. I feel like I was thinking too much about the process, thinking too much about the end result, being, too selfish and thinking about myself. I feel like, just last year, seeing what the team did without me. I said this, a couple of days ago, seeing what the team did without me. It kind of made me realize that, they don't need me. We got a great team. Coach Muschamp does a great job of talking about, making sure that, it's the next man up mentality. So I want to be that guy that, comes and helps leave a legacy here at South Carolina and help, my guys win games and help our defense, pick it up every week. So
what did it do for your hunger?
It's crazy how much hungry it made me. Just from the day I was able to start back working out and rehabbing, it definitely gave me a little edge because every day I wanted to get better. Every day I wanted to dominate for when I come back. I could be the best player that, when I came here, I wanted to be. So
do you like rushing the passer more or being in coverage?
I like everything. I joke around and tell people I'm an athlete. So yeah, when they ask me what position I play, I say athlete because, because much time they move me around a lot. But like I said, I just feel like, my 4 years here, being able to play DN, being able to play inside linebacker, being able to play, outside linebacker, that's just going to help the team, help the defense. And that's the biggest thing. I always said that I'm willing to do whatever the team needs me to do. I said that for 4 years, and it's not going to change this year. So
I know you have a whole season to go, but how much do you think about the next level?
I try not to think about it as much because, God has a plan for me. I see it every day. I see guys are playing for this team. And it's just crazy that, when you think about the end goal, you try to plan things out, God changes your plan. So I feel like last year I was thinking too much about the end goal instead of worrying about the team, worrying about the now and, helping dominate with this team because if we don't win games, nobody's going to go anywhere. So that's kind of my biggest thing. Don't be selfish. You can have selfish goals. You can have goals like I want to dominate every time I step out on the field. But if you're thinking about the next level right now, and we haven't won any games and we haven't completed none of the goals that we wanted to complete, nobody's going to make it to the next level. So just making sure I relay that to the guys. And we got a lot of leadership on the team that relays that to a lot of the guys that, if we go out and do all the things that we talk about every day in the meeting room, a lot of guys going to get paid. So we just got to continue to work every day and keep dominating training camp.
That is Bryson Allen Williams. And, it's interesting, guys. I know we I don't want to say we forgot about him in the spring. I know there was that one day we were talking about him, and then someone tweeted at him and said, oh, they're overlooking you. That's a guy, you want to talk about somebody who is a Swiss Army knife. He can play buck. He can play outside linebacker. He can play inside if you need him. I mean, he's a big, big key to what could happen. I know we talk about TJ Brunson as a leader, but he's one too.
Yeah, this has turned out to be really a blessing in disguise for USC because you go right from Sky Moore to Bryson Allen Williams with TJ Brunson in there as well. That's a very good two-headed monster at linebacker in terms of experience and leadership.
You just wonder who's going to be on that other side, whether it's Sherrod Green or Eldridge Thompson. And Coleman Hutzler, who we spoke with earlier today, said that is a neck-and-neck battle right now for that opposite spot.
I'm just seeing some very disturbing news.
Uh-oh.
Columbia is getting a new area code. 839.
Yeah, apparently so. Yeah. Because the city's growing.
can't handle that.
The latest on this weekend's race is around the corner. The full Monty on NASCAR is next. This is Sports Talk.
We go racing this weekend, Corn, and Monty Dutton comes up, of course, as we usually do on a Friday, going, of course, trying to make sure that Michigan is where he can make his mark.
Yeah, back at Michigan we go for the second time this season. Monty Dutton is with us from MontyDutton.com. Expert on NASCAR, author. Check out his books on his blog, MontyDutton.com. He'll be happy if you purchase one. He is more than happy to sell you one of his novels. What's the most recent one you put out, Monty?
Latest one's called Don't Ask, Don't Tell. It's a political thriller set in the present time.
Oh, okay.
Russians running around.
So it's
seems to be a popular subject.
It's like The Americans, is what you're basically. It's like the show The Americans.
Well, no, it has a plot where it winds its way where you don't really know what the full implications of what's going on until the second half of the novel.
Do you ever use Clinton as a backdrop for your novels? Things that have happened around the fine town?
Not by name, but Clinton is a town like Clinton is prominent in Intangibles, which is about high school football when the schools were integrated.
Yeah.
And there's a book. There's one called "Forgive Us Our Trespasses." That's a crime novel, and there's a Clinton influence in most everything I write. And then my next novel, novel I'm working on is about baseball, and the main characters. I think he's actually officially from Clinton.
We look forward to that. So let's talk about NASCAR. Let's go back to Watkins Glen, where everything seemed to go well there. They had a big crowd. I've heard the TV ratings were good. A lot of excitement coming out of that race. And it didn't hurt that Chase Elliott gets that elusive first win after a bunch of runner-up finishes in his career. He finally gets the checkers.
Yes, I think that there's sort of a bittersweet quality to the race, to the week, because the race was just perfect. The long-awaited win by Chase Elliott after 8 second-place finishes. His father, Bill, had 8 second-place finishes before he won. It was the first Chevrolet win since the Daytona 500. 20 races had passed. It was just a feel-good story. I mean, it's a young driver who has a ready-made fan base. It's just what the sport needs. And then what happened? This big feel-good story gets stolen right from the headlines by the scandal involving the head of NASCAR.
Mm-hmm.
So that was just a major bummer that came along on Monday.
What do you think results from all of this with his suspension, another family member stepping in? You know, the rumors have been out there about the Francis looking to sell the sport, basically, you know, getting rid of it, getting it off their hands. Is any of that really happening? What's going to happen with leadership and ownership of NASCAR?
I think that the France family has tested the waters. My suspicion is that there's not enough market value to satisfy them. So I think that they need, if they're ever going to unload, they're not going to unload unless they can work the value up. That's a real risk there, but I don't think anything is imminent, and I actually don't think it can do any harm. I really don't think that Brian France can do anything to NASCAR that he hadn't already done. You know, they're going back to the previous generation. His uncle Jim, who's more from the old way of running things, and is not doesn't have that zeal to take over the world that Brian took over, because he basically thought that, you know, now we're going to have a real sport. I'm going to take this thing. We're going to run the NFL out of business. Mm-hmm. And I think that of course sounds really ridiculous now, but in the early part of this century, people were talking like that, and it's ridiculous. It was ridiculous then.
Where do you think they went wrong?
Well, I think that they dedicated everything to making the whole world love NASCAR, and they forgot the people that already did. Mm-hmm. And so when all the fly-by-nights moved on to the World Cup or the World Backgammon Finals, they've already disillusioned all the base. I think that NASCAR is sort of unique because in every sport, like when baseball went on strike, you have people say, well, I'll never be back. And when the NFL players knelt, they said, well, that's it. That'll be it. I'll never go to the game. And most of those people did and will. But in NASCAR, I really do think there's a good many people who lost interest, and they just stuck to their guns. And that might be the worst way. That might be the best possible way for a bad sign, that fans actually hold a sport accountable for doing what they consider to have ruined it for them, for whatever reason. But you know, I think they lost the bedrock. I think they lost the base, is what the political term is.
Monty Dutton, the full Monty on NASCAR. And so they announced this week that Mustang is going to be parts of the NASCAR Monster Cup Series scene here, I guess, starting next year. So we'll have Camaros, we'll have Mustangs. What's going on there with these body types?
Also, Toyota's going to introduce a Supra, and probably after one more year. I think that they're trying to make the cars cooler for a younger audience. I think that the sports fan base is aging, and they need to draw interest in the young. They're trying to get cooler cars. I actually think that the new Mustang is the most fusion-looking Mustang imaginable. But after all, the Camaro has slumped this year for Chevrolet, so I'm sure that Ford doesn't want to change things too much. But I think it's in general a good idea. It's actually something that I thought when I was a kid, when I was going to races as a little boy, I used to think, why don't they race cool cars?
Mm-hmm.
When I go to Greenville Pickens or Columbia Speedway, they'd be running Mustangs and Camaros. And then you go to Darlington and Pearson would be driving a Mercury that looked like an aircraft carrier. So even though I'm an old man now, I still kind of like the idea of having sportier cars in NASCAR.
Yeah, think back to the days of the Superbird. Who was the driver? Last name Hamilton. Pete Hamilton. Yeah, Pete Hamilton drove the Superbird with the big wing on the back, things of that nature. I mean, that, back then created quite a stir.
Yes. It didn't last for a short time because they were getting, it's so funny, they were getting far flung. They're getting distant from production cars. So what's the case now? They're so much farther from production cars now that's unbelievable. I mean, those Superbirds, at least you could actually buy a Superbird or a Dodge Daytona or a Ford Torino Talladega or Mercury Cyclone GT. You could actually buy one of those for the highway. You can't buy anything that looks like any of these cars now. If you did, you wouldn't like it because it'd be a real pain.
All right, so Clint Boyer won the first race of the year at Michigan. And, of course, we've got the big three, even though they did not win last weekend. You still can't overlook them. So as we go to Michigan this time around, who are you pointing to?
Well, I'm going to tell you that you are right, Phil Colombo. Just a week late. I think I'm going to pick Hamlin. I have erred in that area, but I am crushed by the success of somebody other than the big three. And Hamlin led all three sessions of qualifying today. And Kyle Busch is right there with him. And I was till I watched qualifying, I was going to pick somebody else. But I have decided that at long last, if we can manage not to speed on pit road or do something otherwise stupid, Denny Hamlin's going to win on Sunday.
Sound bitter there, Mike. You didn't have money on it, did you?
No.
Did he?
Last week I picked Harvick, I believe.
Did he?
Phil picked Denny.
I did. Did he come off the truck fast, or is it something they did in the garage before they hit qualifying?
Well, last week, to be honest, I always feel like it's a random pick if I haven't watched anything. And I have other duties. Like, for instance, I'm sitting at a high-field scrimmage right now.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, today I actually watched a good bit of it, and then I had two wins recently, and one was a Truex and one was a Busch, and both of them I watched closely, and I had some good feeling that they were really good, not that I just was blowing smoke on the radio. So I think that Hamlin's going to be good Sunday.
We don't want you to blow smoke unless it's car smoke. Appreciate the time, Mike.
Thanks for having me.
Look forward to seeing you in your new Mustang next year.
We will wrap it up. We'll do some recruiting. We'll hear from Clemson special teams coach Danny Pearman and a very disturbing story out of a Big Ten school that's not named Ohio State.
Now back to Sports Talk, South Carolina's most listened to sports talk show for more than 30 years.
We'll take a call if it comes, 800-956-7266. We'll hear from Clemson special teams coach Danny Pearman, and we want to do also this story that comes out of the Big Ten that is not Ohio State, that is about as disturbing as it gets. But, Corn, you wanted to avail us of tonight's recruiting.
Very non-disturbing edition of recruiting. Just some quick notes. Spartanburg running back Cameron Robinson tells us Virginia has been in touch recently after checking out scrimmage videos, been invited to a game there, has not been offered. USC running backs coach Bobby Bentley remains in regular contact, has sent him video of their running back drills. He talked with Will Muschamp last week. His offer list includes USC, Tennessee, Missouri, Purdue, and Colorado State. Offensive lineman, defensive end, Cooper Dawson of Hanahan, going to miss the season, of course, with a ACL injury suffered at a Clemson camp in June. The Tigers offered him as an offensive lineman. He continues to hear from Tony Elliott and Robbie Caldwell. Appalachian State and Coastal Carolina also offered for the OL. Colorado State and South Florida offered as a tight end. His other offers, which include UCF, Wake Forest, Old Dominion, Army, Navy, Princeton, Brown, Georgia State, for the defensive line. He said part of his decision will be based on which position he wants to play in college. And he said right now he's liking Clemson, Princeton, Brown, Army, Navy, Central Florida, and USF. He was at Clemson for the cookout in late July. USC, of course, offered point guard Giovanni Santiago of Puerto Rico, who attended high school in Cincinnati, will attend Hargrave Prep in Virginia this season. He said he remains in touch with recruiter Chuck Martin, who scouted him last month in Atlanta. Santiago also has an offer from Samford and is drawing interest from Iowa State and Santa Clara. 6'7" Josiah James of Portugal is scheduled for an unofficial visit to Duke tomorrow. He was in San Francisco earlier in the week for a camp, and his coach, John Pearson, said now that they're back, James will plan out his official visits from his short list of 9: USC, Clemson, Kansas, Michigan State, Virginia, Duke, Tennessee, Arizona, and Florida State. Did you know his dad played at Michigan State? He expects James to start taking official visits this month. He said USC and Clemson are keeping up their recruiting efforts very strongly. Clemson's in the Final Five with 6'3" Chase Hunter of Atlanta. That's the son of the late Bryce Hunter, former Georgia star receiver, and his mom played basketball at Georgia. The others on his list are Georgia, Michigan State, Virginia, and Oklahoma. 6'2" Dontrell Schuler, Irmo native who played at Legacy Charter in Greenville, committed to Charleston Southern for the 18 class. Remind you to check out our recruiting on our website, SportsTalkSC.com, on Twitter. Use the hashtag STRecruiting, and anything that pops up over the weekend, we'll have that up for you.
Clemson Tigers will scrimmage tomorrow morning at Death Valley. And, of course, while there are a lot of competitions going on across the field, there's a big one going on at Clemson at punt return as well as kicker. We check in with their special teams coach, Danny Pearman, on how they're handling the first scrimmage of fall camp.
Everybody's kind of getting a fair opportunity, trying to see where people, especially all the younger kids, see who can help, especially early. And then tomorrow's building for the scrimmage. Tomorrow's a big day where we're working all phases of kicking, both kickoff return, punt return, and our field goals will be in there tomorrow. So all those phases get touched on, and then trying to get the right amount of people, the right amount of work. That's kind of our challenge right now.
A couple personnel questions. Darion Kendrick and also Greg Hugel. Can you elaborate on both?
Both are having a good, solid camp. You know, Kendrick has done a nice job fielding, working as a punt returner and also a kickoff returner, as well as probably as a punt returner. Amari Rogers has been back there. We've looked at Kendrick. We've looked at Renfro has been back there in some capacity. Will Sweeney has fielded punts, Mark Fields, and then I was trying to think who all else I saw back there at the end of practice the other day, catching punts, getting opportunities. His field goal, Ukel's done well as far as the three kids competing for the field goal job, which would be BT, Greg, and Austin Spence.
Coach, the new kickoff rule, how much?
Or Alex Spence. Austin's a snapper.
How much do you think the new kickoff rule will just affect strategy? And how much have you been talking about that?
You know, I think the new kickoff rule is going to kind of probably be the kickoff return. From our standpoint, we're going to kick the ball and cover the ball. You know, be up to them to have to decide whether to fair catch it or not. I think you got to cover it just like you cover a punt. If a fair catches it, you got to react accordingly. For us, obviously our mindset is to bring the ball out, especially if we've got a good returner. And then depending on the kicker each week, maybe fluctuate. Maybe it's a guy that can hang it up there extremely high. Maybe your mindset might change, but right now going into it, we're definitely thinking in the return mode. If we can.
When it comes to the kickoff team, especially in the kickoffs, which one of those 4 guys is standing out as
we're going to put it down tomorrow, and I'll be able to tell you more next week. Tomorrow's going to be in the stadium, we're out of the way, and really thump it type environment. Each of them will get an opportunity to kick, and then we'll try to see where it lands for our return teams as well. I think it's real intense. It goes each day. One kid will have a good day. It's like all the other positions. It's been kind of interesting. There's not a runaway favorite that's out there and nobody's catching. Each one of these guys has shined at some point so far in the first week of camp.
Well, you're running out there kickoff return.
Kickoff return, we've had several different guys out there. Probably Travis Choice. We've run Feaster. Amari Rogers is out there. Kendrick's out there. Mark Fields is out there. Powell's been out there. And those are guys that are back deep. And a lot of times the guys back deep, there's one primary guy, and the offset guy may be a better blocker at times. You can scheme different what you want, but all those guys have been back there in some capacity.
That's Danny Pearman talking about Clemson, who will scrimmage tomorrow. Carolina's first scrimmage Monday. They will practice tomorrow and Sunday in advance of that.
All right, a few notes here. First of all, Clemson women's basketball picks up a transfer from Florida. Of course, their new coach is a former Florida coach. Simone Westbrook will join the Clemson women's team. She's from Arizona. And she missed all of last season with an injury, but the year before, she averaged 8 points and 2 assists per game.
Part of the SEC all-defensive team, not a bad player.
The Limestone football team has announced that it has hired David Keeney as defensive line coach, and he has coached at several places, including Virginia, Penn State, and Arizona, so he joins the team in progress. LSU is not going to have the services of Christian Fulton again this year. The NCAA has upheld its 2-year penalty against him, alleging that he tampered with drug testing samples and things of that nature. So he will have to sit out this year. And then the breaking news this evening from ESPN. You never want to see this if you're an athletic director, or ESPN's got a in-depth look at your program. And they are alleging in a story published tonight that under head coach DJ Durkin at the University of Maryland, people close to the program are describing it as a toxic coaching culture. And before offensive lineman Jordan McNair's death in June after a football workout, this is what is coming out of the Maryland program now. McNair, who was 19, died 2 weeks after being hospitalized following a May 29th team workout. He collapsed after running 110-yard sprints, showing signs of extreme exhaustion and difficulty standing upright.
He had a body temperature of 106 degrees at a hospital before dying of heat stroke.
So ESPN's investigated over the past several weeks 2 current Maryland players, multiple people close to the program, former players and staffers spoke about the culture under Durkin, particularly strength and conditioning coach Rick Court, who was one of Durkin's first hires at Maryland back in 2015. And they did not paint, not going to go into all the details, but they did not paint a rosy picture about what's going on there at Maryland.
There was one ex-assistant who had said, I would never, ever, ever, ever have my son play football at Maryland.
Only 2 evers. 1 never, 2 evers. I think you gave him 3 evers.
Do you think it needs more emphasis? Do you think I made the point? I made the point.
Well, I want you to be accurate.
He bad. He bad.
What I like to do is have ESPN go after a blue blood program. If you think that story happened at Alabama, would they be reporting on it?
Oh, they're going after. Well, they're not going after Ohio State. Others are going after Ohio State,
and deservedly so.
ESPN's just going along for the ride.
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about a story like that. Well, you know, the dictator just knows how to work them.
Everybody have a great weekend. Will's going up to cover Clemson tomorrow.
I just want to go eat at Smoking Pig. It's really all they want to do.
I will cover the Gamecocks. Look for the coverage on our website, SportsTalkSC.com. Thank you, Pro. Thank you, Brian. Great weekend, everybody. See you tomorrow on Monday.